WFH with two guys. Now here's Benny and Dennis.
No matter what happens in our lives, and I know like some people, if you're one of the listeners out there who is thinking about starting a business, even if you've started your business and you've taken some risks, there are times in your life where you just are going to hesitate and maybe not make that jump. Dennis, it's happened to me. Has it happened to you?
It's happened to me. And there's times where, you hear that word, the title of the book that we're going to be talking about today, yeah, but is in the back of your mind. And it can be from something way back from elementary school, or someone said to you and you've heard that voice in the back of your mind all your life. And it's like, you have to be able to get past that. And in today's world, there's lots of turmoil in where people are at for jobs. And there's, layoffs happening that we hadn't heard about for a long time. And, you know, in this podcast, we're going to talk about, hey, that can also, even though it's scary to happen, it may be the thing that pushes you to get past that yeah, but and go do the thing that you really wanted to do in the first place, but you wouldn't do it because of the but. So I think we have Marc Wolfe joining us. He's the author of a book called Yeah, But. And we just dig into all this. And this one, I really enjoyed this podcast. This was one that it resonates for you as an individual. Also, if you're a manager of people, it resonates of how you can impact and help other people do things beyond what they think they can do. And I think this is powerful.
This is a really interesting podcast, and we've all been hit by this at some point. I think Mark really crystallizes this in a way that we all can relate to. So have a listen. If we are in the middle of our business and it maybe has had some success or even great success, there are reasons that we run into in our mind that will cause hesitation for us to be able to maybe get to that next level or to make that first step. And I know that has happened to me. How about you, Dennis?
I've used the yeah, but many of times along my life of, hey, I'm going to do this. And sometimes it's a positive. Yeah, but I'm going to go ahead and do this and make the jump to a new job or move to a new city. But I think we all have heard the yeah, buts in our head or even said it. Definitely have heard it from other people around us that have worked with us or family members.
It's important that we bring in experts and people who are familiar with this. And Mark, I know you're familiar with the whole yeah, but type of mentality.
Yes, I've heard yeah, but from myself, from my family, from my clients. It's actually, I hear yeah, but way too often. It made me want to write a book about it. I heard it so often.
When we think about that phrase, and I think about it's a reason for people to say, yeah, I could do that, but, or I've always said like, or however, and there's some excuse that gives us comfort and lets us say, this is the reason why I can't do it. And that really is kind of ridiculous. I mean, it's something that we're all guilty of it, I think in some capacity.
We are. And yeah, but is different than no. Because when you say yeah, that actually means you can, but then you want to sell your excuse. Most of the time it's to yourself. You're like, I can't do it, and here's my reason. And you put it out there for the world to be like, well, I have no time. And everybody shakes their head and goes, you're right. Neither do I. I totally get it. I was like, well, hold on. We all have the same 1,440 minutes. What do you mean? There's people that do different things with their 1,440 than you do. So if we all have the same amount of time, hold on. Is that really an excuse? Let's think about that.
If I'm, if I'm thinking about this and I'm putting it in the forefront of my daily routine in life, it suddenly it seems like it would be like a dam and things would just kind of back up. And then that becomes a very convenient thing. And before you know it, the dream that we had, and I hear this all the time from friends of mine, who said, when I was younger, I want to start my own company. I want to do this. But I've got so many projects going around with work right now, and my kids are so young. I'm just going to go ahead and do that. What are some of the things that we can do? Because there's always going to be excuses. What are some of the things that we should be considering when it comes to that phrase, and really the way we look at ourselves on a daily basis?
Well, yeah, buts happen many different ways. A lot of times they're our own that we have from the past. So even writing this book, right? I'm not an author that has written or will write many, many books. I'm a guy who's verbally confident. I like to speak. So writing is a completely different thing. So the yeah, but for me was I remember that person with the red pen that used to mark up my papers when I was in grade school. And that
Interesting.
still haunted me because that person, Mrs. Press, back in New Jersey, back when I was in 3rd or 4th grade, would mark up my papers so much that it looked like word murder because there was so much red on a white page. And I'm a full-grown adult with kids and a wife, and I'm still letting this woman hold over me the ability for me to not write a book. She didn't even know that, right? And the thing is that was on me. Even though she did it, I could have let that go. So sometimes our yeah buts are in our own head. Other people never said, "Don't write a book." And she didn't say don't write a book. She just said, "Your English should be better." And she was probably right. But the thing is there's editors and other people to help you. So but I needed help. Yeah, but it was my own imposter syndrome thinking what I couldn't do. So I think there's a lot of things that comes internally versus things that come externally where somebody says you can't do it. And that's where I think we have to start.
What are we so afraid of, Mark? Why? Why do we do this to ourselves? Because we know what we should be doing. I think anybody who's probably got the idea of starting their own business or doing something that's going to take their business to the next level, we know that there's a logic behind this. But why do we do this to ourselves?
Fear is one of the biggest things. We don't want to fail. And now when everything's public, remember when we were kids, guys? And when you made a mistake, you and maybe that circle of friends were the only ones that knew about it. It wasn't going to be on video. It wasn't going to be public where the world would know it. Now failure is seen so socially that you could be embarrassed, it seems like forever, even for the smallest mistake, like tripping when you go up to get an award or anything else that you do. So people don't want to fail because they don't want to be seen as a failure. And that's just one reason, but there's so many. I mean, I bet you guys think about it. What do you think people, how about your own life? What do you think keeps you from wanting to do something that's different?
You're right. I mean, it's something all the way back to first, second, third, fourth grade sometimes that you hear it in the back of your mind that, well, you can't do that because someone said you couldn't. Well, I'm 40 years old, 50 years later, I can do whatever I want. And I have the ability to do those things, but it comes out of, yeah, but I won't do it. Or you have, Benny, like you said, a spouse or children that you start thinking about their livelihood or their successes as well. And sometimes you'll say, yeah, I could do it, but it's going to impact my family in a negative way. So I'll just stay in this job instead of taking the job that moves me across country. And so I think fear is the big one. Also just the lack of being able to roll the dice, because it's like sometimes you got to trust your gut. And a lot of times people in today's world, they don't want to trust their gut because they want everything to be perfect. They want it to be exactly right, and they want to know exactly what they're going to do. So I think those are two that kind of jump to mind. Benny, any thoughts on your?
I mean, there's so many, right? Depending upon the situation, the circumstance. I mean, for me, it took a few years before I had the courage, and actually, I was shoved into starting my own company. Truth be told, right? I had been let go from the third different company in 2 years because they ended up closing the division, and I was tired of it, right? And so that was kind of my tipping point. But Mark, it occurs to me is like, there are a myriad of reasons why we want to, pain avoidance, embarrassment, all those type of things. What are some of the things that we can do if we're catching ourselves doing this, or what are some ways that we can combat this from actually taking hold of us?
Yeah, that's the beauty of thinking about it first of all and understanding it is a yeah, but, right? I don't reprimand people to be like, "You need to do this, and this has to happen, and you should." I'm like, "You don't wanna should all over people. You just don't." And the thing is that think about it as maybe a sole breadwinner or someone who's a provider, you feel like there's risk in change at all, right? There's stories in the book about a lawyer who had these great ideas. Actually, he's based in Nashville, and he was at an event telling his story because he was so profoundly affected by the conversations we had. He was at a firm and he was basically doing work on a global scale, but that's not what the firm did. So they didn't really appreciate how he had contacts around the world. And they said, well, that's great for you, but we're really not interested. And when I had conversations with him, it was more conversations about, hey, Mark, that's his name as well. Do you really see that you're being underutilized here and your firm doesn't appreciate what you do? I'm like, that's not right or wrong, but it's just they don't see the value you have. And he thought about it and he just shared with me recently. He's like, you made a logical argument. I was like, I was just a friend. So I didn't have to want to help him change. It was just something he said. And I think we hear this all the time from others. So he went and another firm said, could you start our firm office in Nashville? And he did. And he had to talk to his wife because she's risk averse. And she was like, yeah, go for it. And he was surprised because that meant taking less money and that means starting things up. So if somebody in their late 50s can make a move like this and be able to do it, how many times do we convince ourselves that staying somewhere and then ultimately getting laid off where you thought it was safe, but it wasn't? Things aren't as safe as you think they are. So not everyone should start a business, but thinking what you're going to continue to do and it won't change is safe is the most dangerous belief that you can have when you know in your heart there really is something else for you.
And this is we're talking about ourselves here, but I also think about the yeah buts when I was a manager. I would hear it from employees a lot, and then I'm thinking, from that perspective in your book, how as a manager, how can you help motivate, navigate that employee that you kind of like you just saw with this Mark person, you saw the potential there. How do you open those doors or encourage them to get past that yeah but?
That's a great question. And here's the thing with Mark, just like with so many other people, Benny and Dennis, you guys will tell me something just in our conversation here, and I'll have questions. I'll be like, tell me more about that 3 roles that you had, Benny. Like, tell me what you were thinking about when you went through it. Tell me why you picked the business you went through. Why'd you guys start this podcast, right? 140 something episodes. What a commitment. So I'm just curious, right? And you could be like, well, we're on a podcast. We're supposed to talk about this. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes you just hear something from someone and you want to ask a question, and people are afraid to ask questions. I'm not, because I really am interested. So imagine being a manager and you hear something from your employee. First of all, you have to have ears to hear and be able to listen. And what happens is many times you have your one-on-ones with your team or other people, and you have these goals to be able to get done or sales goals or whatever, and that's what your focus is. But after COVID, we've learned a lot about other people because we got to see into their houses. We got to see that they care about pets. We got to see, and they didn't invite us in. We actually went into their homes because they only lived in a place where you could see their bedroom or their kitchen because they didn't have these massive homes. You can't unsee that. So as a manager, when you get to know something about someone and you ignore it, what did you just tell that person? I really don't care about you. And what I'm trying to show is that for whatever reason, ask questions that are fair, interesting, be interested in someone. And when someone pushes back and says, I'm really not comfortable talking about that, that's the end of it. But a lot of people, especially to me, will tell me more about their lives just by me being interested. And they will tell you things. Imagine managers actually cared more than they do now to ask these questions and find out their people's yeah buts are, the only reason I'm here is for the healthcare. And you say, okay, well, what can we do to get you more engaged that you could have the healthcare plus a job you love? And maybe that person needs to leave, and that would be the best thing for the manager because they're not supposed to be here. Or maybe they become such a great employee because you asked that question that all of a sudden everything changes because you showed them you care on a deeper level. It's possible. I've seen it. I do it for a profession, right?
Yeah.
But everybody else has this ability to do it, even if they're not a professional asking these kind of questions.
No, and I think you're onto something there because there's some great managers out there that really do get into understanding who their employees are, but there's a lot of them that unfortunately have been promoted because they were really good at a task, but people skills were not their top priority. And they get there, they probably have a lot of yow butts going on in their head as well because they definitely have the imposter syndrome in many cases because they're trying to be someone that they're really not, and they're scared. But I think your comment of just asking the whys and listening. If I'm a manager, it just changes the relationship between you and your employees because nobody wants to work for someone that's could care less about them. You'll show up because you get the paycheck, but if someone really cares about you, you're probably going to work harder and put more into it than you do if you just get a paycheck and you're just a number and not thought about. And I think, in today's world, there's lots of things going on. There's lots of, we had COVID, then we had now where people are, I won't say layoff. There's layoffs happening, especially in the government. Lots of traumatic times, but I'm sure in their head, there's a lot of yow butts going on in their head. They can turn those yow butts into a really positive opportunity at this point. Because I know every time that I had gone through either a layoff or a downturn at a company, you think it's the most worst time ever, but literally, usually 3 or 4 months later, life actually gets better, and you're kind of glad that it actually happened when you look back because in many cases you wouldn't left because you were secure to your point there, but because the company said, hey, we had to downsize and let you go, it allowed you to do things that you hadn't thought about or that you thought about but you didn't act upon because the risk was a little higher. Well, now the risk is not because the safety net's gone and you got to jump and go dive off the diving board now. So it's like all these people I'm watching on news about layoffs. It's like, guys, yeah, my heart goes out to you, but it's also probably one of the best times in your life that you could actually do something with it if you can figure out what your why is and where you can apply your efforts.
It's the difference between a fixed and a growth mindset. So you could look at when you're laid off. And again, I've owned my own business since I was 16. You know what risk that is that you have to make it rain? You have to go and hunt and kill to be able to get the job done, right? You got to do it all on your own. There's people that feel like they're safe and secure in W-2 jobs and then they get laid off.
Mhm.
So, Dennis, to your point, if you look at the opportunity that you're like, what did I wish that I would always have wanted to do? And now's my chance. And I have no excuse because I'm laid off. Right? If you lean into it, what could it look like? Even if it only works out halfway. Well, I have to provide for my family. I was like, so do I. But the thing is that what are you robbing the world of that you should be doing, but you've butted yourself into the point of actually believing you can't? Right? So I'm not talking this isn't self-help, this is business. We're trying to help business people. But the thing is you work for a reason. It's maybe to provide for your family, maybe it's because you do what you love, but how about if you did it a different way? How about if you exposed it to different people? How about if you put it out there and somebody wanted to collaborate and say, "Hey, I see what you're doing. Can I add to what you're doing?" And it becomes better because you put it out there. That's to me so exciting. And I think if you hang around people that believe that same way, you can do a lot of cool things. But if you hear people that tell you you can't do it all the time, and maybe that's your spouse or other people, you're going to start to believe it. Don't let people put their limiting beliefs on you to the point where their shortcomings have become yours. When I was leaving New Jersey, everyone told me an Italian guy from New Jersey that's going to move to the South, that talks too fast and talks with his hands, is never going to make it in the South. They could not have been more wrong. I've made friends with people that are unicorns that have lived here their whole life. I've had more business here and I've made better friends and connections here because where you're supposed to be, if you assimilate to it and you understand where you're going, you leave some of the people that you left behind and their beliefs behind. What could that look like?
As business owners, drivers, managers, leaders in the company, it we need to take a look at the environment we're creating and be able to say, "Hey, are we fostering one of openness and being able to kind of like move the company and take those risks? Or are we creating a yeah, but type environment? I mean, it seems to me as you were talking, that could very much be unknowingly the environment that we're creating.
We create an environment where excuses become the culture, if that's what's expected. And the thing is that that's why you need some futurists. You need some people with vision. You need some people to push, but you also need some people to say, how are you going to pay for this? And what is it going to look like? But if you have just people that are the masters of no in your organization, you will not survive. Right? Think about BlackBerry. Think about a lot of products that were so pervasive and they didn't evolve and grow and change. Think about the taxi industry that said, no one's ever going to get into strangers' cars or do it. We have a medallion. Think about why would you ever sleep on some stranger's couch and now all of a sudden you're living in their homes as an Airbnb? All these things that were impossible. What's the next thing that's impossible, right? Using AI to be able to do things, be able to. So there's so many things that if you ask people and you said, come up with an idea, they'd be like, I'm thinking about this. And then they would give you a yeah, but. And what my job is, and I think you guys do the same thing, to think, what's possible? If you move past it, if you went to the Entrepreneur Center, if you went and you had conversations, if you researched it a little, what's possible? And I know it's possible because I've lived it. I've helped other people do it. And now I've written a book called Yeah, But with the 15 biggest yeah, buts I've heard and 25 different stories from people that they have heard and haven't. And I just think that you guys know that if it's possible, you could change the world, or at least your part of the world.
If it's like a butterfly, you just start one little speck and it sends the waves throughout the world. So it's
Butterfly
amazing.
effect. You know, Dennis, I think that you've gone farther in the book than I have, but you could actually read this book kind of hopping around. They're independent, like modules, if you will, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, the way Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, you build it as modules and you don't have to read the whole book all at once. You can read sections 2 and 4 and skip some other things. And you've set it up really well with the titles that you know what's in each section. So you can kind of go in there and read those stories and play around. It's an interesting way for me that I like bullet points. I actually like the book better versus having to read a whole book. It's like it's really hard for me to do that.
But people are busy, right? I mean, and the first thing they're going to say is, yeah, but I have no time. I'm almost like, you know what? There's a chapter on that. Once you start there, and each module is just that. So when you tell people you don't have to read 202 pages, just read literally the chapters that relate to you. Yeah, but I need help, or yeah, but what if I fail, or yeah, but not where I'm from. Read those chapters because reading something that's not relevant to you, the first thing you're going to say is, why did I have to read this? Here's what happens. Most people read the whole book ultimately because they know someone else that says it. So imagine using it to help others, not just yourself. And imagine using these case studies, which are real life stories from people that you know, like Stephen King or Andre Agassi, and knowing what's going on with that. So it's a lot more fun when you can actually read it. And I love that you guys are already diving into it. Thanks.
Mark, there's so much more that and I know Dennis and I have questions that we have for you. So we're going to definitely have you come back. But I know there are going to be some people out there who would love to reach out to you, talk to you about their situation personally. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Well, Google done an amazing job. So if you type in Mark Wolfe, MARC, and Wolfe, WOLFE, and the words yeah and but, now that's but with one T. If you put two T's, you're on your own. So it's Mark Wolfe and yeah, but. But my website's also marcawolfe.com. So it's MARCAWOLFE.com. But yeah, I'd happy. You can get a free sample chapter. You can go on Amazon and be able to get the book. And I think, starting at $10 for the ebook is an easy place to start working on it. Plus, I'm happy to have a conversation with people if they reach out. No yeah buts about that.
I love it.
Yeah, that's great. Reach out to Mark Wolfe, author of Yeah, But. And it really is an amazing conversation. Mark, thanks so much for stopping by today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Well, Dennis, that's another podcast in the can. I know that A lot of you all want to know how to get in touch with us. Dennis, what's the best way for folks to be able to get a hold of you?
Yeah, email's by far the best for me. It's Dennis J, so DENNISJ at worksolution.com. And that's WORX solution, no S at the end, so solution.com. Benny, how about you?
Yeah, same thing. Get a hold of me. My email address is benny@velocitytechnology.group. That's BENNY at velocitytechnology.group. Also, for me and Dennis, you can find us on LinkedIn. Look for us on LinkedIn. Our Work From Home with Two Guys is on LinkedIn. And we also have a website, WFH2guys.com. Look us up. You'll find all the past episodes and some little bits of information that maybe we don't get a chance to talk to on the podcast. We put it out there too as well.
And definitely share us with your friends and people in your network.
Absolutely. Let us know what we can do to make this podcast your podcast. Give us some ideas. And if you'd like to be a guest, let us know. We'll talk to you guys soon.
You've been listening to WFH with Two Guys. We'll see you next time.